Today we're speaking with filmmakers Silas Howard and Harry Dodge about their awesome film By Hook or By Crook, releasing to a wide audience for its 25th anniversary. This groundbreaking and restored film releases in New York City on June 12th and in Los Angeles on June 16th, and then expands to cities throughout the U.S. So this film is coming to a city near you. The film won audience and jury awards at SXSW and Outfest. By Hook or By Crook is a trans and butch buddy film that chronicles 3 weeks in the life of two freaky grifters who join forces and learn the true meaning of poise under pressure in an anti-authoritarian film of friendship, trust, and redemption. Welcome, Silas and Harry. Thank you for being here today.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so you've written, directed, edited, and produced and acted in this production. It's quite a feat, and it's adorable and interesting and awesome. And I love the naturalistic style of acting, and you two have a great rapport. And I'm like, wow, you did this 25 years ago. So you've said your film was ahead of its time. Truly, it is and was. And I'd love for you to talk about how you met. You were working in San Francisco's lesbian hangout Cafe Commons, and you were doing a lot of activism. So can you talk about sort of the culture at the time?
Good research.
Go ahead, Silas.
I was had moved to San Francisco in 89, 88 from Vermont. And it was a really intense time in the city. And I was working at Cafe Commons, and I met Harry there through a person that worked there who said, you remind me of this person. They're Gemini like you. They like to have a fun time like you. And anyway, Harry came in and we struck up a friendship. And I think it was also like a really in-between time in queer culture. You know, there was this sort of gay and lesbian community, but AIDS really ravaged the community. And there was this sort of new emerging queer punk and trans and butch and, just a sort of new crew that came out of that crisis.
I think in those days, Silas and I became friends. There was a lot that we were doing, and it included activism. I know Silas had just got back from Nicaragua and was in a sort of meeting up with some really amazing activists and revolutionary people there. And we were all sort of busy doing a lot of activism around the AIDS epidemic. And we were also, a lot of our friends were in bands, so we were doing that a lot. And it was an amazing time. I remember at the beginning of our friendship, there was a way that a lot of dyke culture was in bars. And before long, I remember in our friendship, we sort of were wanting to stop drinking or whatever. We're sort of addressing, this. And eventually we wanted to start a space, I remember. And so right away, I think when we met, I was thinking about this yesterday because I was looking through a bunch of old pictures. There was a way that both Silas and I and a lot of people around us were feeling this sense of possibility, this ability to sort of build into the underground, whatever it was, these alternative spaces, these alternative ideas, these alternative worlds. And the idea of world building sort of quickly in our friendship became a part of what was possible. So whether it was making a space for us and our friends to sort of hang out in, or whether it was making a movie, we started making things.
I like to call it the benefit of nobody caring about us at all and no one expecting anything successful to come from us. It was a lot of freedom in that, and that we made our own record labels, we made our own spaces to perform bands in, we made our own zines. And I think that time is coming around again now. I think there's an urge to be offline and in rooms with people. So anyway, I've been thinking about that time too.
Oh, very cool. And zines are so awesome. You were owning a radical cafe in the art space called Red Dora's Bearded Lady and Truckstop. Can you kind of paint a picture? Also, Steakhouse, who's the producer on the film, owned Club Jesus.
Steak sort of ran Club Jesus. And in those days, there were a lot of clubs where you would just take over a bar for one night. And you'd get like 10 friends to go in and staple black plastic to the wall, totally redecorate the bar just for your one night a week club. But yeah, Steak was also involved in event making for sure.
The cafe we started because we tried to start a collective space previous to this. And then I was in this band, Tri-Bait, and we toured Europe, and we saw all these amazing squads where it was different because the government would like give the houseless kids this building to have. But I saw a pathway, and it was like, oh, we could do that. And we rented this storefront for $600 a month, which seemed hugely, insane amount of money to come up with. In addition,
weirdly, it still sounds expensive to me.
And we pirated our electricity.
We took on that responsibility.
Yeah. Anyway, so we, but it was, and even though it was like the size of 2 bowling alley lanes, it was a small storefront space. A lot of really amazing people. Harry just sent me this flyer where Masha Gessen and Jacqueline Woodson and Alison Bechtel all performed there. Kathy Acker taught a class there. It was again, the times were calling for us to do things ourselves. And I think, again, with the film coming out, even the way it's being distributed independently is sort of a sign of a new trend in getting movies out in a different way.
Yeah. So do you see yourselves as having helped foster this community? You're talking about, world building. And you talk about your film being like a community project, or can you sort of expound on that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, we're sort of looking back right now, but, I think that we landed in San Francisco and there were all kinds of things already going on, all kinds of radical activism, all kinds of amazing people, all kinds of bands, all kinds of creative projects. And it was all very underground. And then, like Silas said, there was some, Silas and I like went to Europe and traveled around and saw some weird squads in Berlin. Silas was traveling with Tri-Bait and saw all kinds of different underground gathering spaces going on. And I think we both had a sense like there was something more to add in San Francisco. There was space for us to experiment with our ideas and I think we both sensed, especially I think with Tri-Bait, it was perfectly clear that gathering people together in a space is very, very powerful. Gathering people together, their bodies in one space at one time, is a very, very powerful social energy. It's a kind of power. I think that, Silas and I, weirdly, we became friends and we started doing these projects, and we did the cafe first. Again, like he said, we first started to try to start a collective space. And that was great. It was called Whiptail Lizard Lounge. It worked really well, but we never got enough money to get our own, like a brick and mortar. It was a traveling event series, which is great. And then we started this cafe called Bearded Lady, and we started having events, and it was a coffee house, and we served a little food, and that went on for a few years. And there was a certain point when Silas and I were like, what are we going to do when we grow up, though? I remember thinking, what's next, And it was right in the mid-90s when, what's his name? Kevin Smith? Anyway, he did Clerks. There was this whole idea of indie film where you could be a nobody and then you could just suddenly make a movie on your own dime, and suddenly you could become a famous movie director. So that was our big idea. I sort of remember being in the cafe deciding that's what we were going to do when we grew up. We were going to become rich and famous movie directors. And we were like, okay, great idea. And so we started writing movie scripts, and we wrote one. It was no good. We wrote a whole nother one. This is over years' time. Probably took a year to write the first script. No good. We took another year to write the second script. Also no good. And then we took another year to write By Hook or By Crook, which we thought was good. And we started. And right then, San Francisco was having like its first .com boom, like the late 90s. And it went bust. But first, like half of our friends who were good at computers were suddenly making 7 times the amount of money that they had been making. And all of them, it was kind of a burn hole in their pockets. So about 10 different people gave us anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000, something like that. And we went into production, with probably 30,000 or something. We had a little RV that we would change our costumes in, and we had a little, and we shot kind of pro, where it took, we were working 10 to 19 hours a day for 30 days in a row. Yeah, and we sort of got it done.
I would just add to that and briefly, it was yeah, while everybody was getting evicted, money was flooding into San Francisco. And I don't know if we would have, if Dogma 95 hadn't happened with the celebration and, they set up these obstructions, these rules. And I'm thinking about that again now with the film industry kind of tanking and, the way that we might need to turn obstructions into creative strategies. But so all of that was happening and the tech boom was happening. And, it was just an interesting combination of things. And I went on to do TV shows, and both Transparent and Pose were shows that had a lot of connection to this time that we're talking about. It was interesting to feel these threads from when nobody was paying attention to, it was like we built a world where we had value. We kind of looked at each other instead of looked out at the world that was not being very kind.
Yeah. So the film premiered at Sundance back in 2002, and it received critical acclaim. Can you tell us about that moment?
Yeah, I mean, well, we did an odd thing. We played at San Francisco Film Festival and Outfest before Sundance, and we got some awards there. And then Sundance, it was amazing because it makes you legitimate. It like puts you, those laurels carry a long way. There were some funny things that happened, which is like we were mistaken for catering when we went to the director's lab. Like there was something that just read trespasser about us. There was something that it was.
Seriously.
But it was also.
As far as the timing of this restoration and redistribution, I'm wondering, have anti-trans sentiments been refueled by this current administration, or do you think it's just that anti-trans agenda and attitude and aggression is just more visible again? Like, from your perspective?
It's a really hard question. I think, that every demagogue needs a scapegoat, and sort of like oligarchs and capitalists need scapegoats as well, and distractions. And there's always something. And, right now it's immigrants and trans people, it seems to me at the moment, or at least that's on the tips of their tongues. And it's a backlash moment as well. I feel like in the 90s, gays and sort of marginalized groups it had been sort of a long tunnel of oppression. And so in some ways I felt like at the Bearded Lady and our friends and I, there was a way that we were sort of used to it. Like it was like fish in water. We were like, the mainstream is never going to be open to this, so we better make our own world. And we were definitely fighting for rights, but we were definitely fighting for our friends' lives too. And in some ways might not have been addressing the mainstream very much were it not for that, were it not for the epidemic. I feel like there's a difference now in that we're in a backlash space. So rights are being taken away. Rights had been sort of, rights with quotation marks around, had been sort of allocated. Certain mainstream, what's the word I'm looking for? So
I don't know, but I do know that backlash is definitely,
backlash feels different, yeah.
It does. I mean, I think what I would equate it to is that, before we were, trans people, queer people weren't accepted in the main gay and lesbian spaces. So we were already carving out space. But my experience in the world is that through art, through music, through the movie, that broke all those barriers. Like all the people that I assumed did not like us, and that, always these people were pointing to on the other side of the room, through the movie and through the band, we were in the same room and actually connecting. And so it's been a great experience, in spite of how scary it's been to go out in the world as very, identified or, out as something that's being targeted. And it is a little bit sad to see the targeting going on right now, and some of the most vulnerable populations by the most powerful people is just awful. And the thing with trans stuff is that a lot of it came up really fast in the media. It wasn't like totally in control. We didn't have control of the narrative all the time. And once Caitlyn Jenner came out, I was like, oh boy, here we go. But it's like really, it was a tricky thing because it was very fast, and it's become this sort of touch point of like trans athletes is an excuse to say, take away anything trans. Like, popular vote doesn't protect people like us. We're not part of the majority. So yeah.
my son's in college, and a lot of my friends have kids that are gender fluid. I would say just that's a pretty good overarching statement. Like,
Sure.
I think you paved the way for this new generation to be comfortable finding their expression of who they are.
I love the kids. I mean, I think this younger generation is not traumatized by somebody being different than them. There's room. They're more worried about the planet being on fire and fascism than what somebody's pronouns are, and rightly so.
Yeah.
So it does feel good. It feels like it does feel there's a continuum there, and I feel like we're still in the right side of history, in terms of it will swing again, I think, towards a more.
I mean, when we were making By Hook or By Crook, the thing is the young people still like By Hook or By Crook. There's a weird way that the movie sort of stands the test of time. I'm actually really proud of that, but I feel like that's in part because we weren't explicitly addressing anything political in the movie. The movie is about a friendship between two people who are not perfect, but they're quite lovable. And it's a movie in our minds, even at the time, it was a movie that anybody could relate to if you have a friend that you love, and so there was a way when we, as artists making this film that, we really wanted the film to be a beautiful film, to be to go down. I really wanted the film to be like go down in the annals of historically great cinema, not just queer cinema, but just great cinema, just a really beautiful movie. And
I just wanted to survive it.
Yeah.
But
we wanted to, but we also didn't want to explain anything. We wanted to make a movie, like Midnight Cowboy, where, the characters are just imperfect. They're not representing a community particularly. They're just imperfect characters like Ratso Rizzo, or, just a character that was completely interesting. And we were not doing homosexual PR or trying to prove anything or explain anything to the mainstream. We were really just making a movie with interesting characters. And we wanted those characters. We had always wanted to be movie stars when we were kids. Both of us had that in common when we met. And we were like, oh yeah, I wanted to be an actor. And, we had all these people that we sort of looked up to, Jodie Foster, Chrissy McNichol, people like that. And, but there weren't a lot of parts for little butch, little tomboy kids, and so.
No, one and done.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we were like, let's make one. And so,
I would
the
just
whole idea was like, let's put these characters into a regular old movie. That's a beautiful movie. So hopefully, that's also part of what people are taking away. Like, oh, this movie doesn't explain anything, doesn't apologize for anything, and it just assumes that people are going to be able to follow along, even if you've never seen these characters, or very rarely have seen this gender of character on the screen,
And I would just add that it's a love story about a friendship, and we don't get much of that in any, in the mainstream movies either. It's about romantic love, but really these, the chosen family, these friendships that get us through, they're really important. And I think that's kind of helped it stand the test of time as well, that it was radical to make a story about friendship. I just rewatched Bound, and that was made 1996, and it's so phenomenal in that it's right away, the two main characters are lesbian and having like wild sex, and they're just, meeting up, and none of it is about them explaining or waiting till the end of the, movie that they could come out. And it was, I think even though it was really difficult times, it just, there were a lot of people that were pushing against that, not again, unlike now. I just keep thinking of parallels.
Yeah, in Bound, they didn't explain anything about the gay character, and it wasn't about anything about homosexuality. And also, and remember, that was right before we started making our movie. And also, that movie set it off with Cleo, Queen Latifah's character, was super sexy butch character in a movie. And we were like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, this is an amazing stuff. Yeah.
Well, you guys are awesome. This film is awesome. By Hook or By Crook. Thank you so much, Harry and Silas, for joining us today. Your film's awesome. I highly recommend it. Thank you for doing what you did. It's a fantastic one.
Thanks, Pandora.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.